Okay. That's been going all night. Hopefully this is ready to rock and roll now. I've been getting the older son trained up on it's time for him to start taking on more responsibility in the house, certain chores. And so yesterday was a fun day for him, doing new chores. One of them is lawn maintenance. And so he had the lawn boy, did a safety indoctrination, and he went and used the lawn boy for the first time. He did an okay job. Lots of room for improvement, but he got her done. But in the process, starting and stopping the lawn boy every 5 minutes for a new instruction, we ended up killing the battery. So hopefully that's going to work. I love these things, man. This one's got the Briggs & Stratton engine, and I'm pretty happy with it. No problems at all. Just keep the oil clean and off to the races. We'll get that fixed up. Been working on the garden, trying to make it look nice. This here is a Hawthorn, I think. That's beautiful. And the kids love to climb trees, but not this one. Interestingly enough, we got this electrified cat's tail moss growing up the stem of this thing, well up into the crown. It loves this tree. Only the old wood, though. We got these bryophytes growing on it. These are nitrogen fixers, basically natural fertilizer. They break off, land on the ground, decompose. Natural fertilizer. You know what? Honestly, these are. When we got here, all of these plants had pretty much grown into one organism. It was just one continual hedge all the way across here, and so I separated them. This obviously is getting a little more vigorous species than these ones, but this one here is not getting enough light. I got too many trees around me. And this is the cherry tree. It's I'm not going to get too much of a crop off it this year, because I've had to go through the process of essentially cutting it. That's about a third of what was there. You know, the top 2/3 you couldn't even get to, so no sense having them. But unfortunately, this tree also does not get a heck of a lot of light, you know, with the tree line we have around us here. So, but you do what you can. The garden's really starting to come together. Really enjoying it. This is a Patreon only video with you guys. First of all, I'd like to probably say that this is a beautiful larch, by the way. It's a deciduous tree. It's got needles, and it loses all of its needles every year. You can see kind of the debris field underneath of it. That's a bit of a problem for wildfire, but I have a to-do list that's pretty long. Anyway, I don't really feel like I've been spending enough of my time and resources on doing Patreon related things, because honestly, like I'm not in it for the money. If I was in it for the money, I would be doing something else. Honestly, there is no money in it, but I do want to say thank you to all of my Patreon subscribers. It's that $1 a month, or some of you have actually donating up to $20 a month, and I'm absolutely bewildered and also honored by it. Kind of an uncomfortable subject, but essentially I kind of see a lot of people, they seem to put out videos of low quality content, in my opinion. They just, it's become a job for them, and so they constantly putting out videos that I think they're not really well considered or thought out. I don't want to turn into that. The frequency of the videos that come out on my channel are not very frequent. Maybe now it's more like, maybe it used to be like one a week. or sometimes more than one a week. Now it's turned into kind of like one video every 3 to 4 weeks. And I did lose some Patreon subscribers recently, about a third of them. And you know, I get it, especially after you know, Patreon is starting to shut down accounts because they have a political opinion or an opinion that is contrary to what they deem to be acceptable, and so they'll shut down your revenue sources. And I'm looking at that thinking to myself, yeah, that's not cool. And then bam, 30% of my Patreon subscribers gone, vanished. They said, sorry, but I can't do business with Patreon because of this bullshit they're playing. And I get it. However, I'm still here, just simply because it's working for me. But I totally get where those people are coming from. So anyway, I just wanted to say thank you to all of you Patreon people out there. Like recently, just Steve came in out of nowhere. Boom! I forget if it was like 20 bucks a month Patreon. I was like, whoa. It's like, wow. So I thought maybe I'd take you around for a tour of the garden. I think I did one of these last year. Taking a little bit of kind of a different approach to the garden this year. We'll just start. So here we have weed garden number 1. You can see I essentially all I can do at this point, especially after, you know, I'm coming out of pneumonia right now still, but you know, it's around 85% good, 15% bad. The coughing only occurs in the morning, but this is essentially with this garden all I can do. Now I know this is these lupins aren't terribly special, but I like them. This here is sage. Got to cut some of it up, maybe throw it with a steak or something like that. This is all sage as well, essentially grown wild. Some forget-me-nots for added color and flavor, I guess you'd say. These, I understand, these lupins, they're poisonous. Don't try eating these. Anyway, this here was basically where I kept my firewood last year. And, you know, a logging truck load was supposed to come in here, and we have basically 10 acres of timber, so that's what we're going to be using was for our firewood this year. But however, it just didn't work out. But that's where I was going to put my firewood. Let's go into the greenhouse. This total disaster. Again, I haven't really had the time to do what I wanted to do in here. You guys saw, I think it was a picture on Instagram of, I had this all mounded out and had a grand design for this thing. However, it didn't quite work out. But essentially, all of this here is Boston red beets. I mean, they're the big steak ones, right? Now I've got them mounded, so there's clusters of maybe two to three seeds per every single one of these mounds, as you can see. But essentially, it's very strange. I've got all of these. These are all red beets coming up. I'm going to have to obviously weed some of them out. I've also got a real horsetail problem. Serious pain in the butt. And I got that, whatever the heck that is. I don't even know what it is, but it's I'm trying to weed it out. This stuff here. It's awful. But it doesn't get any taller than this. It's kind of like a creeping plant. And this stuff is definitely going to shade it out, so I'm not too worried about it getting to be too much. But man, these are awful. What the previous owners of this property did is they went out to a river, got some river rock, this stuff here, and it was loaded with horsetail. And then they brought it into their garden, and it gets into everything. Anyhow, so red beets. This over here is, you know, it's a few months. Well, it's behind schedule, let's put it that way. But this is also going to be red beets. Why am I focusing everything on red beets? Well, I kind of look at it this way. It's fireweed. We pickled them last year, and it was a total success. And we're still eating them, and the whole family loves them. And so if it works, if the kids will eat it, the family will eat it. You know, give a jar to your friends. They love it. if it's a success story, you got to keep repeating it. And of course, we got potatoes. These are the red potatoes. I just actually filled them in, so that's only about the top third you see there. Just filled them in last night. Give them a good water. Lots of potatoes. And of course we got some strawberries here. I mean, this takes time, right? I mean, just trying to stay on top of the weeds itself. This here is kind of a weird one. I've dislocated a bunch of these. I want them to dry out, get the hot sun out here. Take care of some of the, I gotta weed this one again. It's a pain. But this here is basically just I'm not gonna get anything out of this. These are essentially like a garlic chive. Exceedingly potent. I mean, just one of these clusters, I want these to grow so that they're kind of a cluster of maybe 4 or 5. Eventually this entire hedge will fill in. So I'm going to keep the spaces in between relatively free of weeds, or at least try to. The idea is that this is going to be a future project. It's going to maybe take 3 to 4 years for it to actually set up. But eventually each one of these rows is going to look like that. That garlic chive. I mean, it's essentially just going to turn into a big giant bush of garlic chives. That's kind of what I want. These things are exceedingly potent. And you can chop it up, freeze it, use it for different recipes. And of course here, last but not least, is dill. I'll be doing lots of pickled carrots, maybe some eggs, and it's things like dill that will kill you at the grocery store. Anyhow, the rest of this has actually been planted to onion. I don't expect it to do much this year. Over here we got, I'm totally giving you a garden tour here. These things are incredible to me. Got a good crop off them last year. Unfortunately, we had a little bit of dieback over here. I'm not quite sure what happened here, but they just didn't make it through the winter. So I got a little bit of work to do to get these things back into production. I'm trying to keep it watered, but I'm glad these guys are. I love bees. These here are getting pretty darn close to. In fact, I've got to get in here today. I'm going to start harvesting some of these. And these are, again, going to make rhubarb pies. Rhubarb apple pie is incredible. A bunch of other recipes. These are going to be coming out today. These ones here are coming online too. They're a little bit behind. But there's some in there. They got to come out. So the first harvest is going to happen today. They're everywhere. You see them out there? They're flowering. I should probably take those off too. But... And these are a different kind of chive. This is your traditional chives. I've also been kind of working on a new gun project, which you guys are going to love. Although I did have to... Hang on here. What's going on? Camera's doing a strange shot. Okay, so... Got a rifle project that's on the go. I had to sell the 1958 Model 70 Winchester Featherweight 308. Had to sell it. With all these, it was essentially a gun trade, that Winchester Model 70 Featherweight. Beautiful rifle. However, I basically sold it to acquire another AR-15, 20-inch H-bar 117 twist. It's all basically a call to A2 20-inch 117 twist H-bar that's been fitted to an STI upper and lower receiver. Because of all this this gun BS that's going on in Canada right now, all this talk about an AR-15 ban, you know, the kind of positioning and the language that the government is using as it applies to firearm laws, the way they're painting lawful gun owners and boxing them in with the criminal element is absolutely unforgivable in my opinion. So they're talking about banning guns which were invented to hunt people. And that's the terminology being used by the Minister of Public Safety and so on. Bill Blair and Ralph Goodale. I don't even know what the name of Bill Blair's ministry is. He's like a made up, he doesn't have any staff, he only reports to the Prime Minister. His ministry essentially doesn't barely even exist, yet he's the one making all the rules. So I acquired this AR-15. So the Winchester had to go. And the reason why I acquired that AR-15 is because if they do ban the AR-15, I want to be grandfathered. You know, if they actually ban it and recategorize it as a prohibited firearm, I want to be grandfathered. And so I acquired it. Now it's a total gamble because the Liberals could turn around and do an order in council to have them banned, which means you'll be forced to deliver them to the RCMP for destruction. In which case, it's basically a carbon copy of what the New Zealanders did, the New Zealand government, which is essentially what they did was they weaponized an all-of-government approach to weaponizing the government against its own citizenry in the name of gun control. Because I mean, what happens is when the police want your firearms and you do not comply, and they know that you have firearms because you have a federal firearms license, you're basically already in a database. I mean, if it's restricted firearms, they already know what you have. So if you don't surrender that firearm by a certain deadline, that means the ERT, Emergency Response Team, or your local police SWAT team is going to be coming to your house. And they don't politely knock on your door when you haven't surrendered your firearms. They come in with full tactical gear, bust down your door, and they secure every single room and every single human being in that house. It could be your daughter playing games at the dining room table. There's somebody with an MP5 trained on that child where they go through your house, find you and your firearms. And if they find what they're looking for, you can say goodbye to your family. You can say goodbye to your income. You can say goodbye to freedom and liberty itself because you're going to jail. That's what happens when you weaponize the government against its own citizenry. And that's what the gun control people are asking for, and they celebrate and they rejoice when they get what they want, as they have been in New Zealand. It is borderline psychotic, evil. They're eating their own. And these are highly vetted people. There I go again, starting to tirade about it. But we got to talk about these things. We got to be realistic. I don't know. I don't know if I'll make this video public or not. Maybe I will. Anyhow, so this gun project I was just telling you about, the Winchester Model 70, it's going. AR-15's coming back. I also have been, you got to sell stuff to acquire stuff. Because if you don't, the wife is going to knock on your door and say, okay, what's this bill? Where did this come from? How are you going to pay it back? So you got to make sure you try to have some self-discipline when it comes to the acquisition of these things. Is a Parker Hale 1100 lightweight. In 6.5 by 55 Swedish Mauser. It is a rifle I've probably been looking for close to 20 years, and I've found it. One of the reasons why you keep going back to certain gun stores is because their stock is continually changing, and sometimes they get something in. You got to keep going back. If you're specifically looking for that one thing, and it suddenly arrives, you got to be prepared to move, and you got to be able to move fast to acquire that thing. So the Parker Hale 1100 lightweight. It's essentially the featherweight Model 98, large ring Model 98 Mauser. This one's in 6.5 Swede, and that's just beautiful. Got a great palms well. It's got that Schnabel forest stock, kind of a European stalking hunting rifle. And in a caliber I absolutely adore. 6.5 Swedish Mauser. So happy to have that finally. So I have to go through a process of working on the wood, because again, I don't know where Tradex is getting these rifles from, but they've been sitting off the shelf for a long time. They have not been well maintained or taken care of by the last owner. Who knows how long ago these things were actually, have been neglected, sitting in a box somewhere in a warehouse. I think I think these rifles came from Sweden. The rifles that Tradex is getting in. Let's go into the greenhouse here, get out of the wind. I think they're coming from Sweden. I don't know that, but maybe Finland. We're gonna have beets. And one lettuce. By the way, there's actually a couple of tomatoes coming up. I had grew tomatoes in here last year. There's one. There's probably going to be a few more of those coming up. There's one right there. So these are going to get to be pretty tall. And well, I guess we'll see. You never know what's going to come up. Some of it's going to be bad, some of it's going to be good. Anyhow, this Parker Hale, I'm going to go through a process of treating the wood with linseed oil, of course, pure linseed oil. And it's a very slow process, but you got to do it. Got to rehydrate that wood, and just finished doing that with the Jungle Carbine, which I'm going to reassemble and shoot in a video for you guys. Well, not just for me, but yeah, pretty much for me. I know I'm just taking you guys along for the ride, but this is stuff that I like doing. So I'm kind of doing it for me, being selfish, but trying to share. Is that I acquired this 1946 number 5 Mark I Jungle Carbine, and it is beautiful. But I managed to get out probably 70 years of copper fouling out of that barrel. And what did I find underneath? Rust. Damn it. It's essentially a brand new barrel. It's got, I don't know how many rounds went through it. Probably quite a few over a 70-year period of time. But the galvanic corrosion has a tendency to screw up your barrel pretty darn good if you don't clean it out. And that's what it's got. So I'll be shooting that out. But I had to go through a process of curing the wood, again with raw linseed oil. And it fits nice and tight. Nice and tight. I mean, it was loose before. So it soaks up that oil. The contact points are back to where they're supposed to be. So I have high hopes as to if I tried shooting it before I worked on the stock, it wouldn't have shot worth a darn. And I bet you somebody will just tell me, oh, it's because it's a wandering zero, right? It's a Jungle Carbine. Yeah, it's going to have a wandering zero if it's loose in the stock. I mean, just common sense. I'm not a big believer of the wandering zero, although I'm looking at the Jungle Carbine, I'm looking at the stock. It's not, in my opinion, it needs to be center bedded, like what you do with a match rifle, because it's tricky. Anyway, I don't want to get into that in this video, but Lee Enfields have to be bedded in a certain way in order for them to actually shoot right. It's basically 3 points of contact from the receiver, the action screw, and the forestock. There has to be 3 points of contact with that rifle, and if there isn't that third point of contact on the barrel or in the Knox form area, or at least underneath where the sling swivel is, right around that vicinity, usually it's about 4.5 inches forward of the Knox form. That's where your center blocking is. This rifle doesn't have it. The Jungle Carbine does not have it. So we'll see. I may have to do some shimming just to find out. That may be the root cause. If there is a wandering zero, it doesn't have that third point of contact for bedding. Those are little experiments I'm going to be playing with. I'm also going to be demonstrating what the purpose of that so-called flash arrestor is on the front of the Jungle Carbine. I think you'll find it's not actually a flash arrestor. That's going to be good. That's going to be a fun video to make. Anyway, this is, I've been talking for over almost 25 minutes now. Okay, I'm going to cut her short here. Hope you guys are doing great. My Patreon people, thank you very much for your support. It really does help for me to be able to acquire things like this Parker Hale and this Jungle Carbine. Yes, I'm in negative equity because these are expenditures that, like, I've spent that money, right? And a little bit of money in from Patreon really helps. I mean, even when it comes to like maybe buying dies. So I acquired some 6.5 Swede dies. That's because of you guys on the Patreon account. Little things like that seriously help. The acquisition of some 140 grand CR Pro Hunter bullets. I mean, the costs start to, shooting is expensive, isn't it? Oh my God. I wish I had chosen a more affordable hobby, but there we go. Anyway, babbling. Cheers, folks. Maple Leaf up.